Imagine you are deaf, blind in one eye, and your right arm is withered and useless. Now imagine trying to survive like that, not in a modern city, but in the Stone Age, 40,000 years ago, surrounded by hungry predators with no medicine and no hospitals anywhere. You would think you wouldn't last a single week. And yet one man did exactly that and lived all the way into old age. His skeleton tells one of the most surprising and genuinely moving stories in all of human history. Because it turns out our ancient ancestors did something we never expected of them. They took care of the weak. We have this brutal image of prehistoric life, survival of the fittest, a savage world where the strong ate first and the weak were simply left behind to die out in the cold. If you couldn't hunt, couldn't run, and couldn't pull your own weight, then surely you were just a burden that the group could not afford to carry. That is the story we tell ourselves about the distant past. But when archaeologists actually dug up the bones of disabled ancient people, the evidence told a completely different and far more human story. Meet the man we now call Shanidar I. His skeleton was found in a cave in the mountains of Iraq, and he lived around 45,000 years ago. He was a Neanderthal, and his body was a catalog of catastrophe. A massive blow to the left side of his face had likely left him blind in one eye. His right arm was withered and had been broken so badly that it may even have been amputated below the elbow. He had a deformed leg and foot, which meant he walked with a slow and painful limp. And bony growths deep in his ears had almost certainly left him completely deaf. Now think about what that actually means out on a dangerous prehistoric landscape. He could not hunt with only one working arm. He could not run from danger on a crippled leg. He was half blind, so he couldn't clearly see a threat coming. And being deaf, he couldn't even hear a predator creeping up quietly behind him. By every cruel rule of survival of the fittest, this man should have died very young. Instead, he lived into his 40s, which was genuinely old age for a Neanderthal. He survived for decades, and there is really only one way that was even possible. His group chose again and again to keep him alive. And he is not some lonely exception. There is another famous Neanderthal we call the Old Man of La Chapelle. By the time he finally died, he was crippled with severe arthritis and had lost almost every single one of his teeth. And with no teeth, he simply could not chew tough raw meat or hard, fibrous plants. So how on earth did he eat? Someone else must have prepared his food for him, mashing it and softening it, perhaps even chewing it first, so that this frail, toothless old man could swallow it and stay alive. That is care. That is somebody choosing to look after somebody else. Then there is the case that truly breaks your heart. In a cave in Spain, researchers found the remains of a Neanderthal child who had a severe inner ear condition, the kind we now strongly link to Down syndrome. This child would have suffered from deafness and from crippling bouts of dizziness and lost balance. A child like that needed near constant care, far more than one single exhausted mother could ever possibly give on her own. For this little one to survive to at least 6 years of age, the entire group must have helped to raise and protect them. It truly took a village, 140,000 years ago. But maybe the most stunning case of all comes from a place called Manback. There, archaeologists uncovered a young man who had been almost completely paralyzed from the waist down, with only very limited use of his arms. He could not feed himself, he could not clean himself, he could not move himself even a single inch on his own. He was totally, utterly dependent on the people around him for every moment of every day. And yet the evidence clearly shows that he lived like that for around 10 years. For an entire decade, his community fed him, washed him, turned him, and carried him, keeping him alive long after a harsher world would have simply let him go. And these are not just a handful of rare flukes. There is a teenage boy who lived for years with spina bifida. There is a young man with a form of dwarfism who could not have contributed much at all to the hunt, yet who survived all the way to adulthood and was then buried with clear honor and care. Again and again, all across the ancient world, and stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, archaeologists keep finding the very same thing. People who simply could not have survived on their own, surviving anyway. The pattern is everywhere. You can even see this quiet care written into ordinary everyday bones. Archaeologists constantly find ancient skeletons with broken arms and legs that had healed up cleanly, properly set and given the time they needed to mend. But out in the wild, a broken leg is normally a death sentence, unless someone protects you, brings you food and water, and keeps you safe for the long weeks and months that it takes to heal. They nursed each other through infections, through raging fevers, and through injuries that really should have been fatal. Healing takes time, and time is exactly what a caring group chose to give them. But all of this raises one huge question: why? Why would a group already struggling just to find enough food spend their precious, limited resources keeping alive someone who couldn't hunt or gather? Well, part of the answer is simple: cold logic. A disabled person was very often far from useless. A man who could no longer hunt could still sit and make razor-sharp stone tools, repair weapons, weave baskets and nets, and carefully tend the all-important fire. He could watch over the children while the others were out working, freeing up the young and the strong. And then there was knowledge. In a world with no books and no writing of any kind, an old or injured person was a living, breathing library. They remembered where to find water in the very worst of a drought. They remembered which plants could heal you and which ones would kill you. They held the stories, the maps, and the hard survival lessons of entire generations locked safely inside their heads. To lose that one elder meant losing the accumulated wisdom of the whole tribe. So keeping them alive was not really a burden at all. It was an investment in everyone's survival. But it was never only cold logic. It was also something far deeper, something we would all recognize in an instant today. Love, loyalty, compassion. The famous anthropologist Margaret Mead was once asked what she believed was the very first sign of true human civilization. And her answer was not a tool, or a pot, or a weapon. It was a healed thigh bone. Because in the animal world, a broken leg almost always means death. But a healed one means that somebody stayed behind with you, carried you to safety, and looked after you until you could finally stand again. And that, she said, is where being truly human actually begins. Now let's be honest with ourselves. The Stone Age was still a hard and often brutal world to live in. Not everyone could be saved. Sometimes in the most desperate and starving times, terrible choices surely had to be made, and not every injured person or newborn survived. Compassion clearly had its limits when the entire group was on the edge of starvation. But what is so remarkable here is not that this care was somehow perfect. It is that it existed at all, so widely and so incredibly far back in time, woven right into who we were from the very, very beginning. So, how did disabled people survive the Stone Age? They survived because of the single most powerful tool our species has ever developed. Not the spear, not fire, and not the wheel, but simply each other. Our ancestors looked at someone who could give them nothing in return, someone weak, broken, and completely dependent, and they made the choice to carry them anyway. And that one choice, made around a flickering fire tens of thousands of years ago, is the very thing that makes us human. So the next time someone tells you it is a cold, dog-eat-dog world out there, just remember the man who could not hear, could not see, and could not hunt, and who lived a long, full life regardless, because his people simply refused to let him go. Like this video if it moved you, and stay curious.